The upcoming Russia-U.S. summit in Moscow. I'm now joined online by Ivan Eland from the Center of Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute in Washington, D.C. Mr. Eland, thanks very much for being with us here in the program. Now, can we expect a breakthrough in arms reduction discussions between Barack Obama and Dmitry Medvedev in Moscow next week?
Well, I think it's possible. I think they're making progress, as your report indicated. They're, talking about warheads and carriers. And I also think Obama is less inclined to do missile defense, and the Democrats who control Congress are much less inclined to do missile defense than, of course, the Bush administration and the Republicans were. So Barack Obama might regard it as a favor if Russia were to drive a hard bargain on the missile defense, although I think the U.S. will try to use that as a bargaining chip in the negotiations. So I think, yes, there is a possibility. These things take a long time, but I think both sides want to negotiate, and I think, the missile defense has always been a sticking point between the two sides going clear back to Reagan administration, but the Obama administration is much less amenable, or will be much more amenable to negotiating on that subject.
Well, this is clearly one of the key topics in discussions between the two presidents, but what other areas of Russia-U.S. cooperation can we expect to be discussed next week?
Well, I think on Afghanistan, Russians, I think, may have been behind the Kyrgyzstan base being reopened to the U.S. Or not closed to the U.S., because I think the Russians and the U.S. have a convergent interest in battling the Islamic insurgency in Afghanistan. So that's one area where they can cooperate. I think there may be some differences on allowing Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, and I think that will be discussed as well, the differences as well as the areas of cooperation. But I think, this is not a Cold War. All countries have some divergent and some convergent interests, and the U.S. and Russia are no exception.
And in today's interview to the Associated Press news agency, Barack Obama has expressed his optimism about cooperation with his counterpart, Dmitry Medvedev. And yet, at the same time, he said that Russia's Prime Minister, Vladimir Putin, has an outdated view of relations between the two countries. Is it a timely statement? What do you make of it?
Well, I think that could be a little inflammatory to the Russians because the U.S. Seems to have an outdated view as well. We're pushing NATO, as I just mentioned, on to expand to Ukraine and Georgia, and NATO is a Cold War alliance. So I think the United States ought to look in the mirror as well and look at their policies. And I think both countries could probably move beyond the Cold War and reach cooperation. And I think Obama is probably much more willing to negotiate behind the scenes than that statement indicates. I think, Obama does have to placate some of the hardliners in the U.S. and the Republican Party and more conservative members of his own party, and that may be a statement to do that, but I think he may be more apt to negotiate behind the scenes, and certainly the U.S. has to look at its Cold War posturing, too.
All right. Ivan Eland from the Independent Institute in Washington, D.C., thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us on the phone today.